Hi, thanks for joining today. So there are many important issues that are naturally addressed from a generational perspective. How much should we spend on our children's education? Should we devote more resources to Medicare and Social Security? How much should people be saving up for their retirement? These are just a few examples. There are many more. Later, I'd like to talk about these issues in light of an important coming storm, population aging. But first, I want to talk about COVID-19 from a generational perspective. So COVID-19 is having a huge impact on how much we are producing in Hawaii. We have record levels of unemployment and underemployment. Many businesses are shuttered, and many others are operating well below capacity. This is leading to a sharp drop in labor income and asset income, which together constitute what we call primary income. Working age adults will suffer, and so will retirees to some extent, because they depend on asset income. Now, there are many people, children and some retirees, who are not heavily involved in the productive side of the economy. Their prospects during a recession will depend on a web of transfer systems that provide for their support. Children will depend on families, but also on state and local governments that fund public education. Seniors will depend on federal programs like Medicare and Social Security to maintain their standards of living. So in this talk, I want to show how resources and how, hence, economic vulnerability vary across age, relying on baseline data for Hawaii compiled for 2012. Let me share now. The data rely on a generational perspective pioneered by the National Transfer Accounts Project that now includes research teams in more than 70 countries around the world. These accounts document how people at every age acquire and use economic resources to meet their material needs, to help others, and to provide for the future. The Hawaii Project is a collaboration between the Swiss Center and the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, to which many people have contributed. We'll have more detailed information on our website, and this is the URL that will take you there. So let's begin with labor income, which is fundamental to our economy. We estimate the labor income composes about 71% of primary income in 2012. But what does the age pattern of labor income look like? Well, we show this in the upper panel, which is per capita labor income. It peaks at age 53 at about $60,000. Note that it is very low at older ages, of course, and it is zero when we get to young people and children, rather. Below, we can see how much labor income funds consumption. So between the ages of 26 and 62, it funds more, it provides more than enough to pay for consumption. While at older ages or younger ages, it does not. So we also can look at primary income, including asset income with labor income. And we can see the picture changes somewhat significantly. Now, especially at older ages, we see higher income and a higher percentage of consumption that is being funded. So now Even people up to age 68 are having all of their consumption funded by labor income and asset income, about half up to age 83, and only beyond that is less than half funded by primary income. But children don't benefit from primary income at all. They don't really receive any. So how do children get along? Well, they depend on transfers. So if we look at the sources of income, including private transfers, we can see that children are funding about, getting about $18,000, $17,000 a year from private transfers. That's family support for the most part. And this funds about half of their consumption. There's no free lunch here, though. Some of this is provided by parents, of course. So we have negative values for people who are older than age 25. The peak is at age 46 or so, $16,000 a year. And of course, this is people with teenagers. And we see a little bit provided by grandparents. So age 63, well, it's not inconsequential. It's an average of about $5,000 a year. Now, for the most part, seniors don't really receive anything from private transfers. They're giving as much as they're getting. If we get to very old ages, so in the somewhat old ages in the 80s, we see that private transfers are not inconsequential. They're about $1,000 or so. So then with the final piece of the puzzle is public transfer. So let's turn to that. And we want to distinguish, it's important to distinguish state and local programs from federal programs. So when we look at state and local programs, we see those here. All of the inflows, net inflows, are going to children. So they range as high as around $10,000 a year. A lot of this is funding public education. We can also see where it comes from. It's not from parents. It's coming, maybe partly it is, but it's coming from taxpayers in general. And a lot of it comes from older adults. Now, the public programs are very different. Those fund old age needs, and we can see large public transfers that rise to around $26,000 a year for people 85 and older. And these are funded heavily by people in the working ages. So when we put all of these together, we can see that these resources are funding all of consumption, except for two small intervals between ages 20 and 26, 27. Consumption is also being funded by debt. So people are borrowing student loans, credit card debt. And then when we look at very old ages, 83 and above, we see people are drawing down pension funds essentially to fund their consumption. Now at these middle ages, people are actually saving. So we see then that the generational distribution of resources will surely have a large impact on how the COVID-19 recession plays out from a generational perspective. Both young adults and children are very vulnerable because they depend so heavily on labor income or on their parents who depend heavily on labor income. In addition, children depend on resources provided by state and local governments, which will surely be adversely affected by the recession. The situation is very different for older adults and for seniors. Older adults, I mean working age adults, do depend on labor income, but they also have asset income, and that may cushion the blow from the COVID-19 recession. Seniors depend heavily on public transfers, and at least in the short run, these are clearly more recession-proof than other sources of income. So in the next talk, when we turn to aging, we'll see a very different way in which resource allocations are going to play out. And seniors in particular are going to be highly vulnerable to the impact of aging. Okay, thank you very much.